Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, this past week, I had a really interesting question come into the blog from an author who essentially wanted a do-over on a book. Let me explain. This author had self-published some books in the past. She realized that she has developed dramatically as an author since then and was thinking about unpublishing the books, rewriting them, and then republishing. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in this question. First of all, let's talk about the unpublishing aspect of it. When you have a book, particularly in print, on Amazon, KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, or the former CreateSpace, when you unpublish it, it doesn't really go away. It stays in your account. It just doesn't get deleted. And what's even worse is that if you have an Author Central page, which I recommend that you do, if you unpublish a book, at this point in time, there's no way to take it off your Author Central author page on Amazon. Now, this is really frustrating, and I totally understand what the author was talking about there, because I've had some books over time that are no longer really relevant due to changes in the industry, or maybe I just didn't like them. But yet, those books are still showing up, and I can't get rid of them. Now, here's the reason for that. Even if you unpublish it, it will probably show up as either out of print or unavailable on Amazon if you're using KDP. And what will show up, though, is that there may be used copies. And this is particularly if you have print. There may be some copies floating around. So it's still going to show up as available as used in some way, shape, or form. So that can be really frustrating for authors. I'm hoping at some point we'll have the capability to delete publications from our author pages on Amazon, but right now it doesn't look like it. So sorry about that. So unpublishing really doesn't do anything. Now, you can also upload an updated manuscript to KDP, whether it's an ebook or now print book, because now CreateSpace is over there. You could, and this would only be for if you are making some minor corrections, which would be maybe some spelling or typos or other small little things. For example, on my books, I even have found a couple of dinks here and there that I wanted to correct. As well, my About the Author page or chapters in my books have changed a bit as my business has evolved. So I definitely have wanted to change those, since my books are business books and I'm using them for sales and lead generation. So I want to make sure that that's current. But the content itself is essentially the same. Now, what this author was asking was to completely rewrite the book in some way, shape, or form. And it sounded like, or the impression that I got is that it would be quite extensive editing. At that point, it becomes a different book. And you really need to publish a second, revised, updated, whatever you want to call it, edition. Because there is going to be some confusion for readers. And I made the mistake on one of my very early books that I did with KDP. I had changed it dramatically, and I didn't change it as a new edition, and now it's just a mess. So I just got to leave it the way it is. So live and learn. But if you are substantially changing your book, I mean, this in a major way, and this author was doing fiction, so I had to question also, would the story change, or there's just a lot there. So in her case, I would say that she should probably do a either revised edition or even move on and do something else. So wow. So that's what happens with revised editions, or how you should handle revised editions going forward. Now, you have to ask also, what prompts you to want to rewrite your book? Now, for nonfiction, it's very common to do updated editions simply because business keeps changing. I think the perfect example for nonfiction are people who published computer software training guides. Well, every time there's a major update to the software, you should be publishing a new edition. So that's very common. And also in nonfiction, you might have directories and guides, and those change frequently. The information changes frequently for those. So for nonfiction, it's generally kind of an expected thing that you're going to keep updating those with new editions over time. Now, the one thing that was keeping this author back was that she had gotten a lot of positive reviews for her previous work. Now, here's the sticking point for a lot of authors then. Those reviews from the previous editions don't carry over to the new edition. The new edition is essentially a brand new publication, and you have to start gathering reviews again. And so I can understand why she was concerned about quote unquote republishing it or unpublishing it and publishing it again so that she wouldn't lose those reviews. Unfortunately, that's just not what happens. And I think for readers in particularly fiction, I think they would feel kind of duped, or I don't think they would have a really good user experience if they realized that, well, the book has really changed. Should I buy the old one? Should I buy the new one? I just think it's very confusing for fiction. And so I think, what an author like that would be better off doing is maybe taking the characters or settings or situations and creating a new generation of that same book or book series so that it's the same thing that her fans already like, but it's a new twist. It's a new thing for them to invest in. Think about all the movies out there that are remakes or just next generation type of material and stories. It's very common and very accepted, and readers want it. So the other thing that I think was a big concern as I read this question was that the author probably felt a little embarrassed by her previous work. Now, all of us who are authors, we can definitely see our development in terms of writing style and professionalism and all that. We can see those things in ourselves, but your readers might not. And if you're just rewriting because you're embarrassed of your previous work, that's crazy. So I would just say that you probably want to do a little soul searching about why you want to rewrite the book. If your fans really want a rewritten book, well, that's a second edition or a new edition or a new generation of the story, well, yeah, then go ahead and do it. But sometimes you just have to say, well, that was my past work. Yes, you can unpublish it so that it's no longer available on a regular basis. It would be just used copies or whatever. But I've decided to leave a lot of mine as they are. I've unpublished, I think, one or two. So I just have to leave it the way it is. And for some of the topics, it just doesn't make any sense for me to do that, do a revised or an updated edition because the whole landscape has changed for those topics. So it just doesn't make any sense. So I think you have to do a lot of soul searching when you're thinking about rewriting a book. And you have to do a lot of market researching to figure out if this is really something that your market wants or needs. So I hope you have found that helpful. And if you have, I would appreciate it if you would wander over to iTunes and give the Heidi Thorne Show a nice rating and review. And while you're on iTunes, don't forget to subscribe to the Heidi Thorne Show so that you don't miss an episode. And you can also subscribe on Stitcher and Podbean. The video podcast is on YouTube. You just have to subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel. You'll get all those videos. And I'm also on your Alexa. You just have to use the AnyPod skill and find the Heidi Thorne Show there. Now, if you want to see all of my self-published books, they are on Amazon on my author page. You just have to search for my name, and you'll see my author page. And my audiobooks are also on my Amazon author page, but they're also on iTunes audiobooks and Audible, so you can find them there. And of course, I would appreciate it if you would share this show and my books and my other work on social media with your author friends. And I really do thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to connect with me, my website is simply HeidiThorne.com. So until the next episode, have a great day.